Hello, team, and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. There's an awful lot to get through today, so let's get on with it. This is a Ukraine war news update for the 11th of May 2023. Go to our usual opening gambit, which is the Ukrainian General Staff figures that they released for Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. I'm sure you've heard that before. Right, 610 liquidated personnel, about where it's been for the last few days. A little bit under, but there or thereabouts. 4 tanks, 12 APCs. I've talked about how I think there's just a lack of tanks out there for the Ukrainians to hit. We've got to the point where the Russians are really struggling. In fact, someone was talking about being able to man their defensive lines in Zaporizhia and not having enough mechanized equipment yesterday in order to do that. Their defenses are going to be pretty sparse. 12 APCs is another heavy day for APCs. That we've seen a few punctuated moments throughout the last couple of weeks of really heavy APC losses. 14 artillery systems and 2 MLRS. That is pretty significant. I just saw some footage of 2 artillery systems of a battery being taken out in Zaporizhia yesterday, Zaporizhia Oblast, spotted by drones, and then Bosch taken out. So that's 2 of those. 2 MLRS is useful too. 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems, very good day if they are high value targets. As you can see, 310 is way less than 1 a day, considering this war is what, 430 days plus or something. So less than 1 a day. It does depend whether those are autocannons or S-300s or whatever, somewhere in between. High value systems are obviously really useful for the Ukrainians to take out. If they are going to have success in the counteroffensive, they will need some kind of air activity, close air support. They will need to get rid of anti-aircraft warfare systems. 3 drones, pretty quiet night considering what we have had over the last week for drone activity. 10 vehicles and fuel tanks, 2 pieces of special equipment. If they are things like electronic warfare systems, that is useful, but they could just be sort of diggers, excavators that are helping to build trenches or whatever. It's quite a wide remit for that category. But yeah, so I guess a fairly average day, but still, in some senses, but still useful in certain areas. 12 APCs. Again, if you're losing that day in, day out, and I've seen footage to support that as well. It's just, yeah, difficult for the Russians. Indeed, here is a bit of footage. In 2 days, SSO unit White Wolf destroyed multiple pieces of Russian equipment, including 4 tanks, 2 BMPs, 4 Cossack 2s, 2 dugouts, and a warehouse with ammunition and other equipment. This is just one unit. White Wolf unit that do release quite a lot of footage of what they do, and I get the sense that drones have obviously are becoming more and more useful throughout this war and more effective. I get the sense that they are attaching stronger IEDs to these drones as well. So you're starting to see thermobaric munitions, thermobaric hand grenades being dropped into hatches, and they properly take out the tank. Rather than at the beginning, we do still see some of the IEDs dropped to just sort of small hand grenades type things. It depends how big the drone is, what they can take, what the units have to hand to be able to use. But yeah, as you can see, this kind of activity supports these kinds of figures. Here, so this is going back to how do you get 610 out of one single day's activity? I'm not going to show the entirety of this video because it's inappropriate, but this is a Stugna P, which is an it's a ATGM, so an anti-tank guided missile that's used from a tripod, being very effective throughout the war. This is a Ukrainian indigenous piece of equipment, and you often get a lot of video footage of this because it's on a screen so people can record it, whereas someone firing a javelin, it's often in the distance, you can't really see it, and you can't hold a camera and do this at the same time. So you see a lot more footage of Stugnas, and here we have a Stugna being shot at two groups of troops. So that's probably, I don't know, trying to work out how many people there are there. But I don't know, maybe up to 20 people. There are clumps of people there. I don't know that these are all individual people. And this Stugna gives a really big explosion. So normally you see it hitting tanks and you see the tank getting taken out, right? But here it's fired at people on the ground, and it hits the ground, and basically both those groups of people are completely taken out. I think 1 or 2 people here right at the front run off. But it's really devastating. Big old explosion. You're going to think, well, just in that one incident, that's maybe a dozen people taken out or more. I don't know. So that's the kind of thing that's happening where you wonder, well, is that, are they really over egging that? And you're thinking, well, okay, that's just one instance there representing, you know, uh, quite a significant hit on Russian personnel. Now, on the other hand, this is the first update for I think 4 days for Oryx. So Oryx are the visually confirmed losses for mechanized equipment on both sides. And one of the chaps that helps Oryx is Jakub Janowski, who does a kind of normally a 2-day update. Now, here's a 4-day one, I think. But the figures actually are worse for the Ukrainians. I'm trying to work out why that is. This is the first time I've seen it like this, possibly ever. I might have seen it on one day before. But these are big numbers either way. So for the Russians, 46 in total, and you've got quite a spread of equipment. You've got a large number of tanks, um, which is significant. So 46 there, but then for the Ukrainians, you've got 53. However, there are 10 S-300 launchers. Wow, that is insane. But they apparently are from the initial days of war. So I think they're doing a bit of a catch up. And I was trying to look in the threads whether this is a backlog. And I have a feeling they are looking at some of the photos of those roads going into Bakhmut with a whole bunch of equipment alongside those roads. So if you go into this thread, for example, um, this kind of equipment here where they're suddenly counting a whole bunch of stuff that has been lost over months, but you're only just starting to see the footage. And someone actually points out a double count as well, which is what that is. So this is the good thing about Oryx is the open source intelligence community goes through and like double checks and triple checks. But anyway, so that's a significant list, but again, I wouldn't say that that's what's been lost in the last couple of days for it, just to explain a little bit there. Here, so we're moving on to what's happened overnight in the Kursk region of Russia. Morning began with 5 arrivals at a power substation in the village of Tetkino. The governor of the region reported there are problems with electricity supply. So the Ukrainians are hitting that. I think that's a generic picture there because it's on the next one as well, which is a different area. This is Belgorod region. 2 drones exploded over Belgorod Oblast. I think, and CNN reported on this yesterday about the importance of Ukraine hitting areas in Russian territory because that's like it's called sanctuary. So if you are outside of missile range, such as or HIMARS, let's take HIMARS 84-kilometer range, moving all your depots back 100 kilometers. Actually, if you move it back into Russia, it's safe. Everything's kind of safe. But as soon as that starts getting hit, then it screws up your logistics. And you're starting to think, okay, we can be hit within here. Where can we safely keep all our stuff? How does this affect our logistics? And I talked about before, I think one of the bigger reasons to do stuff like this is not so much the damage it actually causes, but it's fixing Russian air defense systems in place at quite a variety of places within Russia. So the Russians are thinking, oh, I don't know where they're going to hit next, so we better put an S-300 here, an S-300 there. And you start doing that. Russia's a big old country, and Ukraine start hitting in lots of different places. Suddenly, they've got to cover quite a large area of land with air defense capability, and those are systems that you can't then put on the front line in the war. You're having to protect a really large area behind in Russia. So I think there has two. Uh, there are two really major reasons that they should continue doing that. So, a Ukrainian drone attacked the building and military enlistment office in Bryansk region in Starodub, according to the preliminary data. So that's another attack there. And then we've had what looks like HIMARS strikes in Kadivka, which is in occupied territory in Luhansk. And seems like a big attack, says Tim White there. New occupiers report another attack today on Kadivka. 3 HIMARS rockets hit a residential building, according to Russia's propagandists, who say 1 woman was injured. If it was HIMARS and was Ukraine firing, the building likely housed invading soldiers. Yeah, they're not going to waste HIMARS, which have pinpoint accuracy, on random buildings. They have to get when they do the targeting for those, they send it to the Americans to make sure that's fine and they're cool with that, and they work with intelligence with them, and then it goes back. So these aren't just fired off willy nilly like an S-300 or sort of, which has like a great degree of inaccuracy. So you might be aiming at a military target. The Russians might be aiming at a military target using a surface-to-air missile, the ground surface-to-surface mode. Very inaccurate, and it hits a residential building. Yeah, okay, and we don't really care because it still will break the hearts and minds, is the idea, I think, of the Russians. In this case, the Ukrainians are like, we've got these rockets, they have pinpoint accuracy, we're going to send them it here. Do you agree that this is a good place to go? Yep, everyone, okay, right, bosh, 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 and there you go. It's not going to be hitting random residential areas. Okay, not good time to in Zaporizhia last night as a result of a massive shelling with cluster and phosphorus shells. 5 residential buildings caught fire in the village, and another 6 were damaged. 5 people were injured, including 2 ambulance workers. 2 ambulances were damaged, and there's actually video footage of that. So it isn't like the Ukrainians just, saying that. There is video footage to support that, and that is not in Zaporizhia city, but a village further to the south. And then going back to Russia on fire, this is how it looks in Sverdlovsk region today. Not fog, but smoke in literally hundreds of towns and villages. By the way, Chelyabinsk is now the 4th oblast to announce a state of emergency due to wildfires. The regional council announced for Sverdlovsk announced yesterday arrests have been made for arson. I believe this is a deliberate attempt to try to deflect the blame for its negligence. Today, local police have said it's nonsense, no arson, no arrests. Interesting. So we move on to odds and sods, bits and pieces. Zelensky has said in an interview that Ukraine needs more time for a counter-offensive. This is pretty significant. He said he's described the combat brigades, some of which were trained by NATO countries, as being ready, but said the army still needed some things, including armored vehicles that were arriving in batches. With what we already have, we can go forward and I think be successful, he said in an interview. But we'd lose a lot of people. I think that's unacceptable. So we need to wait a bit. We still need a bit more time. Now, these sorts of claims, I think, are really interesting. They can be taken in entirely the opposite way, right? So on the one hand, you can say he's being accurate, and and truthful, and they do need that time, because for sure there is equipment still coming in, and there are people still being trained. But on the other hand, this is entirely what you expect with psyops as well, which is to say that actually we need to deceive the Russians as to when we're going to attack, not only where, but when. So if we say, oh, we need to wait a couple of months, or we need to wait a month and then attack in 2 days' time, there's a lot of merit in that. And so the reality is this could be anywhere between those 2 points, right? And that kind of lack of confidence in what he's claiming there is perfect for trying to fool the Russians, right? So the Russians are thinking, well, actually, I don't know. Like, obviously, the Russians are going to have slightly better intel than me sitting on Twitter, but I think the Russians will still be like, well, they could attack next week, or they could attack in June. I just don't know, and that's the intention. But expect that the full kind of thrust of the counteroffensive might be put back to June. Then again, it might not. Absolute madness, says Tim White. On May the 9th, 2 people in Moscow were fined for wearing the wrong colour clothes. Because, Russia is the heart of liberty in the world, and they are going into Ukraine and liberating all of these places, and then showing back in Moscow what liberty looks like. Yay, freedom. Oh, by the way, if you wear blue and yellow, we're going to fine you. So apparently you can't wear blue and yellow in combination. It's now apparently a crime to wear yellow and blue in Putin's free Russia. Attached is a translation of independent RU site Buzzer's post, just so you know I haven't made it up. In fact, he goes on later, is it in this thread, to show one of the people who was, this guy here. One of the guys Russia arrested for wearing yellow and blue is a Hindu. He also has a vegan cookbook with him, which had some Ukrainian recipes, so he had to be guilty. There you go. That is what it's like in Russia at the moment, I guess. Journalists publish a map of over 200 Russian military facilities in occupied Crimea. Journalists from Krim Reali media outlet published a map on May the 10th that geolocates 223 active, temporary, and preserved military facilities in Russian occupied Crimea. This is the importance of open source intelligence. Like people that have way more time than I do, goodness me, I have no time during the day to do anything else. But there are people out there who have access to uh, commercial satellite imagery. Yes, you have to pay for that, but you can get access to commercial satellite imagery that's really current and do some work and provide to the armed forces. And that you could argue that can happen on both sides. Provide information of Russian targets and say, here you go. There's 200 Russian military facilities in occupied Crimea. Have at it. Interesting. Now, this has been doing the rounds. So this is a drone drop that's a bit different. In Bakhmut direction, a Russian military man was found. He asked the drone operator not to bomb him. The Ukrainian team dropped him a note from a copter. Oh, good song, but, I think that's Muse. Not in my ears this loud at this time in the morning. So the Ukrainian team dropped him a note by copter with an order to surrender and follow the drone. After receiving the note, he gestured that his own people would kill him, but decided to take a chance, despite the fact that his people shot him in the back. Infantry and scouts from Code 9.2 92 OMBR accompanied him all the way to Ukrainian positions, and there is combat footage. There's footage of this, and it's quite incredible. In fact, the best one I've seen is where you see the total one. Quite often, it's this 2-minute 12 one that then finishes with him kind of still halfway there. But actually, it follows him. You can see him get attacked by coming under fire from his own people. And then you see him eventually get out in the end. Now, I'm going to pause that, maximize it, and then have to re-mute that. It's quite incredible bit of footage, this guy. And as he's running away, I think it's around here, there's a massive shell explosion as you can see, there are bullets. He's being shot at here. So on and so forth from his own people. And there's a massive shell explosion somewhere. He takes off his equipment. I think he's pretty close here. Oh, why does it do that again? Just mute is mute, right? Even if I press up here, like unmutes it. It's stupid. Anyway, sorry, rant aside. Here he gets back to the Ukrainians, who then take him prisoner, and that is him there. So this is like a great story of how I suppose it's also a reflection. I was thinking about this of what Russians are going through, and you would just never see this from Ukrainians. You would never see a Ukrainian try their hardest to surrender. It's just not going to happen. They're fighting for their homeland, etc., etc., etc. And I think this is quite a big reflection of psyche and morale as well. Really, really impressive, and I love how he was walked all the way through the trenches and into no man's land, following the drone, and they sent a message to help him. On a side note here, this is doing the rounds as well. This is a lovely song or lovely video. This is Crushed by Imagine Dragons, who are a very big band. If you don't know your music, they are a massive band. And this is filmed in Ukraine. I'd love to play this, but I'll get hit with copyright. But a really moving video that has sort of subtitles. She's supposed to be. Oh Jesus! I just did it again. I'm trying to press play, and I had it on mute. You press it up here to press play, and it unmutes it. Why would it unmute it? I know I keep doing this, and I know I keep whinging about it, but honestly, it irritates me so much. Really fabulous to see big bands using their platform to illustrate the struggles in Ukraine and to get through to people that this thing is still going on. So great from Imagine Dragons. And while you're at it, go and check out Florence and the Machine, their song Free. not only is it a fantastic song, not only is it a song with poignant lyrics about mental health, but it's also filmed in Ukraine. Now, this was filmed before the beginning of the war, but the last section is filmed at the end, which is the very end of the video is filmed after the war began, and it's poignant as well. That's a brilliant song. It's got Bill Nye in the video as well. Florence and the Machine, filmed in Ukraine. So good stuff there. Now, so this is completely not Ukraine, right? But this is the Iron Dome, and there's a couple of bits of footage I could show you. It's a really impressive bit that came out just in the last few hours. But I'm just going to show you this one. This is now. I don't know that Iron Dome is particularly good against things like massive missiles and hypersonic missiles, and even cruise. Is better at things like drones and rockets. But look at how effective Iron Dome is in Israel. So this is it working in Israel. Bosh, 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 taken out all these different, oops, all these different aerial threats. Incredible. Going all over the shop. And that, you would imagine, would be something that the Ukrainians would love to get their hands on. I think there are elements of this that the Israelis have helped Ukraine with, if not, the whole system. But I think they are helping with radar and bits and pieces. Anyway, moving on. Colonel Martin O'Donnell, Speaker of the US Command in Europe and Africa, has said that Ukraine has received 600 types of weapons for the counteroffensive. This is more than any other army in the world. And the ability of the Ukrainians to actually become experts on all these bits of equipment, and then no doubt being able to train others on them after this conflict. Even now, I'm sure I heard yesterday that some of the Ukrainian people who are being trained by UK Army that actually had more experience, more warfare experience than the trainers, and were effectively, more knowledgeable in a lot of areas than the people who were training them. So, there you go. That's life in the Ukrainian army, right? U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland has authorized the first transfer of forfeited Russian assets for use in Ukraine. This is really significant. This is about the funds of Russian oligarch Konstantin Malafeev, which were confiscated by a US court due to sanctions violations, says Reuters. Absolutely brilliant. And the use of that money, I'm going to touch on that a little bit later as well. It can be used for a whole number of things, but yeah, take it from the Russians, hit them where it hurts, and use that for reparations, or use that for some positive way for the Ukrainians. Okay, 110 cars for the armed forces. The Favbet Foundation handed over 110 vehicles. So this is not a national entity. It's not a nation state doing this. These are other organizations raising money and support for Ukraine. 110 vehicles to the defenders of Ukraine for the frontline equipment received by mechanized units, scouts, air defense forces, and special units of the armed forces. This is absolutely brilliant. Good stuff. And this is the kind of help that Ukraine had talked about the asymmetry yesterday, the asymmetry between Ukraine and Russia. This is a kind of area where they are getting so much support, more support from people who care outside of the conflict, from other countries, being able to fundraise and support Ukraine in this manner. Czech President Petr Pavel, who really is such a good person to have elected. Well done, the Czech Republic. He is okay. It's not the most powerful position, the president. It's more of a like head of state type thing. Can't pull all the strings, but being a former NATO military man himself, he is really pro-Ukraine and is able to have some good deal of influence, I think, in Czech Republic. He's visited Kyiv as well. He said that his government is transferring 2 batteries of the Kub air defense system with quite a large number of missiles to Ukraine. Brilliant. He also said he does not rule out the future supply of combat training aircraft, Aero L-159 Alka, for Ukraine. Ooh, now that is significant as well. But of course, it's about getting them there quickly, isn't it? So this is to give a little bit more detail to that. Czech Republic could give Ukraine some of its L-159 fighter jets to support its planned counteroffensive. Czech President Pavel was quoted as saying on Wednesday, Prague has been among Kyiv's staunchest allies from the outbreak of the war. providing material from ammunition to tanks worth of billions of dollars. The L-159 is a Czech-made light subsonic, which means it goes under the speed of sound, combat aircraft designed for air support of ground forces, reconnaissance, and partly also for air combat missions. It's worth considering whether we could provide a Ukraine with our L-159 aircraft, Pavel told Czech public radio in an interview. As direct combat support aircraft, the planes could also help Ukraine significantly in the counteroffensive. Any decision on military shipments falls to the government. So that's not his decision. Ukraine was also in the process of receiving 2 units of Kub air defense system from the Czechs. Pavel said, "Yeah, fantastic." And you can go and find out some more details about L-159 and what kind of munitions it can carry. That would be great. And staying on aircraft, Su-25, call sign Blue 50 from the Ukrainian 299th Tactical Aviation Brigade, equipped with US-supplied unguided Zuni missiles. The plane was provided by North Macedonia and is now in active service. Thank you very much, North Macedonia. And North Macedonia's had it from the Bulgarians, so there you go. They're rockets, not missiles. Because they're unguided. So the UK may not hand over Storm Shadow missiles, as I said reported previously that was one of the four at the forefront of the potential candidates for missiles that UK might supply that have this longer range. It could be not the Storm Shadow, but the ballistic Khan missiles with a range of up to 280 kilometers from Turkish arms manufacturer Rokistan. Defense Express expert Ivan Kirachevsky said on Expresso TV. So it could be the UK. So the UK put out that kind of tender with other allies as well to get hold of decent ranged missiles. It could be that Turkey are going to supply them, UK pay for them, get them over, or UK and allies pay for them, get them over to Ukraine. I guess it doesn't matter wholly what they are as long as they're decent and have range. The good thing about Storm Shadow is it has some pretty good capabilities. I don't know what the Khan has as far as, is it a bunker buster? Does it have this kind of capability, that kind of capability? So I have to look into that. Prime Minister of Sweden, Kristersson, together with the Minister of Justice of Sweden, Strömmer, tested the CV-90 infantry fighting vehicle, which 51 will go to Ukraine. They need to get there soon, and this is possibly what Zelensky is talking about, still getting vehicles in batches. They need some of these CV-90s. These are really good infantry fighting vehicles. Some are saying that they're the best in the world. Some are saying, Bradley versus this. There are lots of different sort of arguments, but these are decent. Rumors go that Ukraine will receive the variant they've specifically modified for international operations. Good stuff. Really fascinating thread here. Could also add that Irish troops are now also training Ukrainian ones in Cyprus on bomb disposal and demining, as per the EU military assistance mission. Ukraine. So Dublin, despite not sending military aid to Kyiv, nonetheless has a dog in the fight. So the thread here: why are the Russians interested in Ireland, and what is their strategy? This might seem like a strange question. The war in Ukraine, the other side of Europe, Ireland has no involvement. We're not in NATO. We have almost no army, and we're neutral. But there are things that are happening. I might have a little look at that later in my extra video. And they are helping sort of train, so on and so forth. So just to go back to equipment, Turkish Otika Cobra 2 4x4 in service with the Ukrainian Army. I showed you these on the back of a train, I don't know how long ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. Turkey have been giving stuff and they haven't been headlined, as in you see them on the train, it's like, oh, we didn't realize that was being given by Turkey. And Turkey talking out both sides of their mouth, trying to get money in from Russia, basically, whilst also militarily helping Ukraine. They're in a very delicate position, I guess. But nonetheless, they have been helping Ukraine with equipment, and some of that equipment appears to be fully in use in Ukraine. Excellent stuff. Right. We have the Russian BTR-50 with a Zu-23-2 anti-aircraft cannons reportedly in Ukraine. These are where they're bolting on these, I guess, weapons that they've got hanging around. We've seen naval cannons being bolted to these BTRs and whatnot. And it's not that they can't do a job. You shouldn't laugh at the fact that these things exist. I mean, you wouldn't want to be shot by them. They're still capable, but what it does is it reflects the desperation the Russians are in. Here a Russian MTLB with twin heavy machine guns bolted on the back. It looks like that's from a naval vessel or something and bolted on the back of that. Yeah, okay, it can do a job, but is that optimal? Does that show that the Russians are in a super position if they're having to do things like that? No, it shows they're in a lot of trouble. The BTR 50 is from it ceased production in 1970. It was entered service in 1954, developed in 1952. If they're starting to use BTR 50s, again, it shows that they are in trouble. Okay, geopolitics, still loads to go. Goodness me. Oh my God. Right, half an hour gone. Right, Russia is acting slowly in Ukraine because it's waging an armed conflict and not a war, says Putin spokesman Peskov. Yeah, it's like, oh, we're going really slowly. It's not. You expect it to be really successful lightning war, but no, it's because actually this is an armed conflict. And this is it's attritional, and this is what we're aiming to happen. Yeah, we wanted it to be a slow conflict. Yeah, whatever. Um, we have former Russian state TV journalist who is Ovsyannikova. Now, she was a woman that held up that anti-war protest on live TV right at the beginning of the war. I don't even remember that. And she got into trouble. She got fined. Anyway, I think she's done a runner now, and she's over in the West. She's been interviewed by Sky TV, and basically says that Putin doesn't have enough Novichok to kill the growing number of critics. Interesting. That's going to go, I think, live tonight. Not live. It's going to go out tonight on Sky News. Look what's happening now. And she talks about how you've got arguments between Prigozhin, Kadyrov, Russian MOD. So there is no active organisation. So I think the elites will divide. And well, we don't know. This might be a classic coup. No one probably is going to kill or poison Putin, but someone from the inner circle might come to him one day and say, Vladimir, we're losing the war. It's time to go. On the last day of war, when Russia loses a war, this will be his last day. This is clear. He fears for his life. He is in his bunker. He's isolated. So on and so forth. Lots of interesting nuggets in that, but I must move on. I might return to that later. We have situation of a Russian missile found in a Polish forest. This is the Russian news article that has all the details. I've done a Google Translate of it, but actually this summary is probably better. RMF FM has some details regarding the incident with what is understood to be a Russian KH-5555 air-launched cruise missile that reportedly fell in northern Poland in December 2022 during a massive missile attack on Ukraine in mid-December 2022. NATO fighter jets were scrambled after a Russian Sukhoi Su-34 bomber appeared near the Polish border. By that time, Polish radar systems were tracking an aerial object that entered Polish airspace from Belarus. Polish services lost the object from its sites near that town where it fell. Its remains were lying there undiscovered until April 2022. So again, this is quite a long way. No, that must be April 2023. Actually, they've got that. He's got that wrong. According to sources, the initial search for the object after the December incident was abandoned as it yielded no results, partially due to difficult weather conditions. RMF FM says the military didn't notify the prosecutor's office about the violation of Polish airspace. So that's significant. And then another significant bit in a second. The apparent KH-555 missile that fell in Poland was an unarmed variant and was presumably used as a decoy to deceive Ukrainian air defenses. Polish Prime Minister Morawiecki, probably pronounced that incorrectly, admitted that he found out about the incident only in late April 2023. So he's only just found out about this, and this happened back in December, a missile going into Poland. It's not the one the air defense missile that fell and killed 2 people. That's a different incident. Right, Russian economy. From January to April this year, Russia's oil and gas revenues decreased by 52% compared to last year's figures for the same period. The expenditures increased by 26% to 11.2 trillion rubles, 147 billion over the same period, $billion. Sanctions work, says Thomas Tyner, slowly but surely. In Russia, the federal budget deficit reached 3.4 trillion rubles, $45.1 billion in January to April. So that's only in the first quarter. This is more than the budget deficit envisaged by the Russian Ministry of Finance for the entire 2023, which is $38.5 billion. So they've exceeded their entire annual budget deficit in the first 4 months. They are in trouble. Russia's January to April budget deficit hits 44 billion as energy revenues plunge, says investing.com. Details in there, but you get the point. It's looking bad for them. Okay, you sometimes hear the argument. So some Republicans, this is talking about a Washington Post article, want to scale back US military support for Ukraine, insisting that Taiwan's defense should take priority. In other words, there is an argument out there that the US shouldn't be giving money to Ukraine. Taiwan's a bigger one. China's a bigger threat. We should be giving money to Taiwan. But Taiwanese leaders don't agree. Interestingly, Taiwan don't agree. And Phillips O'Brien says it best here. The argument that the US should scale back support for Ukraine to help defense is either mendacious or a sign of terminal stupidity. The best way to help Taiwan is to have Ukraine win the war as quickly and decisively as possible. This gives the US the greatest flexibility. Absolutely. If Ukraine absolutely win the war with the help of the US and other allies coming together, then that says to the Chinese, oh, look what's happened when Russia attacked Ukraine, the US and everyone else came to their aid. Should we attack Taiwan? Probably not. Okay, let's not do it. So Ukraine is the biggest way to support Taiwan. Right. I know this is going to annoy half of my American audience. I'm not attacking Republicans, not at all. I am going to attack Trump, but because of what he said, right? Not because of anything else. What he said is wrong or stupid. So there was a CNN town hall last night, and some people really criticizing CNN for doing that. The crowd was completely partisan, and everything that Trump said was cheered, and every gag he made, they laughed at heartily. There's a real pro-Trump audience. Caitlin Collins was trying to push back on things he said, but it was a bit of a CNN disaster as far as I can work out. Loads of people, like this CNN staffer, was saying one of the worst hours that they've ever seen on air. Now, let's just play. This is initially one of the things that was said, and you can see the hearty clapping there. Right.
Let me just put it a nicer way. If I'm president, I will have that war settled in 1 day, 24 hours.
How would you settle that war in 1 day?
I'll meet with. Let me just put it nice.
So, okay, the idea is he is going to settle it in 24 hours. He's a man. He's amazing. He can settle it in 24 hours. So let's see how he supports that claim. But the question from Caitlin Collins here is on point, and he doesn't answer it. And this is so significant.
Just put it a nicer way. If I'm president, I will have that war settled in 1 day, 24 hours.
How would you settle that war in 1 day?
First, I'll meet with Putin. I'll meet with Zelensky. They both have weaknesses and they both have strengths. And within 24 hours, that war will be settled. It'll be over. It'll be absolutely over.
Do you want Ukraine to win?
So, and this next question is so super important. But just to go on that, right? I will meet with Zelensky. He doesn't mention Putin. He says they both have strengths, both have weaknesses. It's like, both sides isn't. I'll meet with them, and it'll be solved within 24 hours. It's just pie in the sky. That's me sitting on TV and said, how are you going to? You're running for president of the US, Jonathan Pierce. How are you going to help the budget deficit? I'm going to say, I am going to produce $8 gazillion. Yeah, woo, yep, $8 gazillion. There you go. Yeah, but how are you going to do it? I'm going to produce $8 gazillion. Yay. That doesn't work, right? You can't just make assertions. When someone says, how are you going to do it? And you just go, I'm going to do it. I'm going to sit down with them and I'm going to solve it. They both got strengths and weaknesses. I'm going to solve it within 24 hours. Just absolute pie in the sky nonsense. This is geopolitics of the highest, most difficult level. You don't solve that in 24 hours with a mere assertion.
Win this war?
I don't think in terms of winning and losing. I think in terms. I don't think in terms
right.
of have strengths, and within 24 hours that war will be settled. It'll be over. It'll be absolutely over.
Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
Do you want Ukraine to win this war? I'm by the way, I'm focusing on this a little bit because this is all over the socials. People are talking about this. This has had quite a lot of ramification. And remember, yesterday I was talking about Dr. Mike Martin saying that Ukraine want to do a big counteroffensive rather than a long attritional one because they want to get this out of the way before the US elections because they are worried. This is playing into their kind of worry.
I don't think in terms of winning and losing. I think in terms of getting it settled so we stop killing all these people. And
do you want Ukraine to win the war? Doesn't answer the question. He doesn't answer that question. Says some kind of trite stuff that everyone claps.
breaking down.
I just don't want people to die. No. Do you want Ukraine to win the war? I just don't want people to die. No. Do you want Ukraine to win the war?
What do you? Can I just follow up on that? You said you don't think in terms of winning and losing. Mr. President, can I just follow up on that because that's a really important statement
let me
that
just
you just
follow
made
up.
there. Can you say if you want Ukraine or Russia to win this war?
I want everybody to stop dying. They're dying. Russians and Ukrainians. I want them to stop dying.
Why clap that? That's obvious. Of course you want that. Like, that tells you nothing. It tells you nothing. Don't clap that.
And I'll have that done. I'll have that done in 24 hours. I'll have it done. You need the power of the presidency to do it.
But you won't say that you want Ukraine to win.
You know what I'll say? I'll say this. I want Europe to put up more money because they're in for 20 billion. We're in for 170, and they should be. And they should equalize. Just put it.
And Caitlin Collins is exactly right there. That doesn't tell you about who should win the war. What he's done there is he's done a distraction, a bait and switch. He's not answered the question. He's given out a red herring. It's like saying, old Doris is being beaten up by a thug there. Oh, are you going to help Doris? Who do you want to win, Doris or the thug? And you're going, well, I'm more interested in talking about the people who are watching here. No, but who do you want to win, Doris or the thug? Yeah. Just these people over there, they haven't done enough, and we've helped out a bit more. I want them to help. Yeah, but who do you want to win? Just really, this was not good. This is not a good sign going forward. And you have people like Michael Weiss just talking, just absolutely excoriating this whole exchange. I could go into more detail. You got Mark Hartling, who's a former military man himself, talking about how he's been following a Twitter handle called Narcissist Facts 101. That all came out in that. So he's saying that actually this is a clear indication that he is definitely a narcissist because he's psychologically doing all the things that you'd expect of that, etc. I won't go on, but you get the point. That is not a good position for all the good pro-Ukraine Republicans out there who want to help Ukraine as much as possible. That is not a great sign for that position. UK prescribing, last thing I'm going to say, UK prescribing Wagner Group as terrorists will help Ukrainians sue. This is really important. So France look like they're going to do this, and America are on the way, and UK doing this will help America come to a decision as well, which will then help loads of things going forward. This is actually a really decent article that talks a lot about the effect of prescription, prescribing it as like a legal entity. So prescription across Europe will likely lead to the action in the US, where a large group of senators are already backing a move that would make it increasingly hard for the group to transport personnel and weapons. That's so important. So they're unable then to transport personnel and weapons in certain areas, which means they can't do the job of Wagner, of making all that money and doing nefarious activities. US earlier this year had sanctioned far more individual Wagner Group members than the UK, as well as Wagner Group Foundation. So this will also, McHugh, a senior partner at McHugh, Jury and Partners, and the head of the Ukraine Civil Society Lawfare Program, said, in the claim, so they're filing a claim, we filed on behalf of Ukrainians displaced and living in the UK a designation by the British government that Wagner is a terrorist organisation will be invaluable in terms of speed and cost of persuading a British judge. We estimate that 180,000 Ukrainian refugees in the UK, we could claim a staggering 5 billion through damages, displacement and PTSD, etc. That money could be taken under existing international law from sanctioned Russian assets in the UK. A British designation would be welcome in itself, but if it led to an American designation, then there would be even sharper teeth due to the American ability to go after Wagner Group supporters extrajudicially, anybody who provided material support for the organisation organization, even if they're not US citizens, would then be subject to US prosecution. In other words, if everyone comes together with these kind of decisions, and it's especially with America that has a power and the clout and the reach to be able to do things, to a much greater degree, then you could start being able to get money from these kind of assets of supporters for Wagner and put that into good places, as well as stop Wagner from doing all their terrible things, etc., etc. Anyway, lots more to say on that. I'd love to go into greater depth, but I've gone off for way too long. Thanks so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. This is the news update for the 11th of